I'm Kerry Shephard.
Morena, my name is Kim Brown.
And Kim and I have written an article for Discourse with the title, How Democratic is Higher Education for Sustainable Development? And the emphasis here is on the preposition for, because this is not education about sustainability, this is education for sustainability with the clear idea that we will be educating sustainably minded citizens. Something very relevant here for higher education is that the Talwal Declaration, now signed by more than 500 institutions around the world, obliges these institutions to educate for sustainability.
So it's come to our notice in our reading around the field of education for sustainability that the terms democratic and democracy are used somewhat liberally, we feel. For example, in a special edition journal on democracy in education for sustainability, one paper, which we cite, uses those terms 14 times in referring to various aspects of social change, social processes, citizenship, teaching and learning. And in each case, we suspect the meaning of democratic or democracy is somewhat nuanced and slightly different.
So trying to get to grips with how democracy as a concept relates to higher education for sustainable development, an obvious analytical tool would be to use critical theory itself. There's such an inherent juxtaposition between critical theory and education for sustainable development. Both of them seeking social justice, and they have universally accepted norms of empowerment, and both seek to affect social change. So we could use critical theory as our analytical tool, but actually we wanted to get outside of that concept and look at it from a different position. So we've chosen a different approach.
We've used the work of Gadamer and philosophical hermeneutics. We came to this approach because philosophical hermeneutics addresses conflicting interpretations of texts and conversations. It's a process of coming to an understanding, acknowledging there may not be one answer. But it's about having that ongoing conversation. And
I've often thought during the process and after the process, why didn't we just pick up the phone and have a conversation with some of these folk and ask them what they meant by the term democratic when they used it? Now, one obvious answer is that actually some of these authors have long since gone, but another is I think the conversation that we would have been a different form of conversation. Actually having that conversation with the text, strange as it sounds, does actually produce a different sort of output from having the conversation with a person. So we hope that we produce something that will be relevant to this conversation around democracy and higher education for sustainable development.
So our findings reflect what we feel is our own deeper understanding of how democratic and democracy are currently being used by colleagues in the field of education for sustainability.
And what we're hoping is that that colleagues will take a fresh look at how the term the democracy is used in education for sustainable development, ask themselves how democratic the process actually is, and I do hope actually try to incorporate some of the more traditional elements of the discipline of education into trying to understand the aims and achievements of education for sustainable development and higher education for sustainable development.
So we urge you to join this conversation.
And hopefully, if you've been watching this video, you'll move on to read the article.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.